Oh, this meeting is being live streamed. Got it.
Got it.
I've got a dog here
Got it.
licking my elbow.
Welcome to Sunday Live, a look back at the albums of the past that have been made around here. And joining me today is my very special guest and great friend, Edward KaSpel. Hi, Edward. How are you doing?
Fine. Enjoying. We've got like an Indian summer here at the moment. It's just like 30 degrees. It's amazing.
100 degrees for London?
Is that 130 degrees centigrade?
30.
It's up there.
Pretty
it's up
up
there.
It's like 92, I think, huh?
Yeah. So something like that. It's like really insane in September. You
Oh,
don't expect.
Edward, you've already done it. He's already said. One of my favorite things about when I speak with Edward is how you pronounce insane. One of my favorite things. I always love it, and many other ways that it just, as soon as we speak, I get familiarized with all the things I absolutely love about you and our relationship over such a long time. It's as old as some people I know.
Oh my
way
God.
back.
I remember that pic.
Isn't that weird? This is like 1986, and for some reason,
Amsterdam, isn't it? That's Amsterdam.
Yeah, in Amsterdam, and I remember it like yesterday. And then, so we didn't know what was upon us, and we made we made the Center Bullet and the Tired Eyes Slowly Burning album, and then kind of like felt like, oh wow, if we ever get another opportunity to get into the studio again, it's going to be a grand thing, because I noticed that as we were building up our sort of idea of the Tear Garden, it expanded outside of just you and I, and then other people started getting involved. And then so The Last Man to Fly was really the first integration of an actual band where we're going to actually play the songs and in most cases improvise the songs upon hitting the studio. In 1991, this would have been around August, that we entered Mushroom Studios. And
indeed. Yeah. I remember it's like very, very beautiful weather at that time.
Yes, we were blessed. And I remember that you guys obviously had to have been on some form of Pink Dots tour at that time. And what was it like? Did it end in Vancouver?
It did. Yeah, it was only our second ever tour of North America. And I remember some of the guys went back, like Niels went back. He didn't record on Last Man to Fly, I remember. He went back with Sabine.
Right. I remember Sabine, who was...
and they were actually stopped at the border because they found, basically, with all the money that was from the tour was, in those times there was a lot of cash. At the border, found the cash in the bus, and they always took it away from us. It's like, it's honestly earned, guys. It was like that. So that was a bit of a scary moment, you could say. But of course, I wasn't there because I was in Vancouver, happily recording at Mushroom Studios.
So yeah, it would be like a case of like you're carrying too much money to travel.
It's something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was in a plastic bag.
Oh, that looks good too.
It's like Breaking Bad.
But I remember that it was the classic lineup of you and Martijn, and I think this may be Ryan back here. I can't really tell.
That's Raymond.
No Ryan in this picture then.
That's Raymond.
Nils and Phil, the Silverman, and you guys rolled in. And I remember that Martijn was extremely still kind of young at this point, wasn't he? Just approaching like 20 years old or something.
He was very young. Yeah, at that time. Yeah, 'cause
I
he only
remember,
just joined the Dots, and he was straight into the Tear Garden. It was like a very
how did you
extreme time for
find
him.
how did you find Martine?
He's a friend of Raymond's. Raymond introduced him because sadly we lost Bob at that, sort of in that time, and uh, and Raymond basically came to our rescue, and yeah, he's an old friend of Martine and introduced us. And at that time, Martine was actually enjoying bands like Can, and so it's like it sort of made sense that he joined us. He always liked his country music and things like that, but he was really listening to a lot of diverse music at that time.
I just remember that there was a lot of deep interest in. He had a deep interest in, and you were exposing me like to things even that I thought that I maybe knew, but I didn't even know, such as watching the Doors live at Hollywood Bowl, actually on live on stereo speakers. That completely blew my mind. I remember we did that with Martine right near the beginning of the album, and so I kind of like think that like had somewhat of a bit of an inspiration, but
That would always inspire you, whether like live doors. Yeah,
I never expected that. I expected that maybe, like inspiration comes in the most craziest forms. And so we got together, and what was amazing, by the way, is that Martine lives pretty off the grid, and what's interesting is that he'll still be on social media. So I hit him up and said, "Have you ever used Zoom before?" And he said, "No, never." But he did forward some amazing photographs, and I was surprised to see that Martine is the one that I least suspected to have material or information about the album. So I don't know. I remember that you guys stayed at a hotel and he stayed at my place, and so he was quite challenging in the sense that but here's him now with him and yours.
That's great.
Absolutely classic. Martin de Clare, of course.
That's great.
The classic Martin. Mushroom Studios, look at it. There it is. I believe that would be the vehicle that possibly was utilized for people to travel in and get to.
Wow, yeah.
I see my
Indeed, I think that
Volkswagen.
was.
Yep. And here we go. Look at this. We've got everybody sitting in the room here before sessions starting. And I see this is Foo here. I see Dwayne Rave. This would have been Martine's friend.
That's Joe, yeah.
Joe, yeah. And I see a very young looking Phil there. It's weird to think that this is 32 years ago.
That is, wow. That's incredible.
So long ago that I can't even with my glasses on, read that.
Dwayne.
But, let's go. We can review some of these memories of Martine throughout our chat, but some classic photos. But also Martine sent me some of his memories, which I thought was really cool. I chimed in with Martine and Ryan, and both of them sent me some memories of the album, and I thought it was interesting that. Again, I'm getting a lot of information from Martine when wasn't really, he was like the person that I wasn't expecting to get any info from.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it was just like, it was my first US Canadian tour with legendary Pink Dots, and super thrilling adventure for me. The tour ended in Vancouver and I thought I was going to go home, but you and Edward asked me to stay about a month longer for these recording sessions. I had no idea what was going to happen. I never heard of Tear Garden or Skinny Puppy and had never been in a proper recording studio. The Mushroom Studios was a big deal, with gold records on the walls and huge old school mixing desks and big old reel-to-reel tape recorders. Very inspiring place indeed. The guys working with us, Rave, Ken, and Anthony, aka Foo, were great to work with. I was impressed with how super patient and supportive they were with me, because I'm really a newbie in making professional recordings and had to admit I was a bit of a brat too. I mean, I think the thing about great about Martin is that he was so Dutch. And then we were kind of like alluding to the point that the Dutch were just painfully honest at times. And they didn't mean any harm. They just tell you how it was. And so, like personally, I think that sucked or something to that effect. I also never heard of editing before. And here I was telling super patient Anthony where to cut and paste in long jam track that was becoming the song Last Post. It was also the first time I met Ryan Moore. I don't think we had ever spoken to each other yet, but we hit it off right away at that jam. I remember staying at your place at Robson Street with your roommate Al Nelson, who was hilarious. The other guys were staying at the hotel next door. You drove me around town showing me the sights in your pimped up VW. What a loud little car that was. I remember having dinner alone with Dwayne and talking some pretty serious personal stuff. Really got along fine. The music that seemed to materialize out of nowhere, which it did in the studio, was very inspired. Everyone was very much in a flow, and there was a lot of fun going on as well. I recall no serious talk about how to compose a song or whatever. It just all seemed to pour out organically. Every night, great dinner at this Indian place. I think that was basically all we ate because we ordered it every day. Well, I could go on. And he
wasn't it?
He mentions a couple more things there, but what a great recap from Martine. And, absolutely just brings up some golden memories. I see that Ryan is actually writing me here as I'm speaking. I'll have to check in with what he's saying. But Edward, do you remember at the very beginning of the album, I think we went out for Indian food, as a matter of fact, and we happened to go to some thing that was just magically happening right at the beginning of when we were about to start recording. And it was David Allen from Gong was playing some sort of like really small sort of like gallery where we went. And
I didn't get to see that. I really always regretted that. And it's the 12 Selves of David Allen. And I don't know, I just was feeling a little tired or something. So I thought, oh no, I'll pass it. But I heard it was amazing.
Oh my God. Okay, I don't remember that you weren't there, but basically David Allen from Gong, also Soft Machine, basically just did a thing that was really like, oh my God, it was so organic. I mean, it must have been maybe only 30 or 40 people there. But he made us all hold hands and do some pretty hippy dippy type stuff. Like, doing Om, chanting Om, and then
that's David for you.
it was wondrous. But I thought, like, what a magical start to the album that was, considering, at that time we had been speaking about some of our inspirations and how you and I were always talking about, say, Can or Faust or something along the lines that you and Phil, who are the masters of knowledge when it comes to the earlier psychedelia, it was kind of intimidating because now here we were in a room and you and Phil and you got Martine and we started in. And so the first song, Hyperform, it starts up with a sequence that sounds kind of either like you or Phil. That's a sequence that either came from you or Phil's keyboards.
It's a W30, yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was a little kind of sequence I put together on the W30, just like a down and down.
W30.
Always making these like little loops.
Yeah. That's a Roland. That's like a Roland like work machine, isn't it? You can do everything all in it. You can sample.
It was a sampler. Yeah, it's one of the first samplers. Like I think it was 12-bit, but you had to sort of like launch it with this kind of like basically a floppy disk. A systems disk. So like if you lost a systems disk, you were screwed basically.
Yeah, exactly. Did you and Phil both have a W30?
No, just me. Phil had I think Phil had an Ensonic, I believe. What was it, the famous one?
Is it, I mean,
the sampler.
Well, that's above the ESQ, so I think that would be maybe one of the first ASRs or something like that, or
It's before that. There's
Yeah. Maybe I could. Dre will know on the side here. Dre, what is it? ESQ? No.
no, ESQ. We both had ESQs. That was like a synthesizer, but
Yeah, that was the
it's
synth
like an
version.
SQ1 or something. No, no, it was something like that. It was some. It was. It wasn't a Mirage. The Mirage was the very first one. It was after the Mirage.
It was a sampler synth, wasn't it, too?
Uh,
EPS.
More of a sampler. EPS. That's it.
That's it.
EPS.
Dre, I knew that you would come through. The EPS.
Cheers, Dre.
EPS 16.
That's it.
Yeah. So there's what Phil had, and Edward, you had the W30, the same thing that a lot of like the first Prodigy album was made in its entirety on W30. It's absolutely
Really?
classic machine. Yeah. We should never sell these things. So right away, we're off the bat. We're starting with a sequence. You guys are starting the album off, and I remember at the beginning that the arrangement for jamming is that Martine, we didn't have Ryan yet. We wouldn't meet Ryan until it seems like a few days in. Now, there's been a rumor online that says this whole session of Last Man to Fly was recorded in one 5-hour session. We need to go on.
No, that's not true.
Yeah, we need to go on Wikipedia and have that erased. Do you happen to know remember how long we were in the studio for?
There were a lot of sessions. I seem to remember. I don't remember exactly how many, but a lot ended up, of course, on Sheila Likes the Rodeo. The really wild ones that were just sort of like screaming out lyrics on the off the cuff. It must be at least a week of them, I'd say. I remember the Empathy session. That was a really inspired one, and
I'm pretty sure in one night we tackled a whole bunch of the songs in one sort of series of jam.
But for Sheila Likes the Rodeo, that was kind of the case. Most of that, I think, was all captured in one night. The sort of like because we just did a jam, then we'd stop, and it was captured. Then we did another one, and it was then we stopped. And two songs that really do stick out for me are White Coats and Halos and Isis Failed. You know, do you remember Isis Failed? Remember the rules for Isis Failed?
The rule was we all had to change instruments.
We all had to. You played bass.
Martine switched the drums, and I love Martine's drumming. He's like Ringo on the drums. He's so tight. And he passed me his bass, and I'm like, oh, great. Here's another, and because that song was recorded live, and I remember we had just made the song previous to it, which would be
that's White Coats and Halos. Yeah,
White Coats and Halos. So I remember that I was so excited that we had made that song so quickly, White Coats and Halos, that I remember Rave was on the acoustic, and some of the instruments is really funny is that this was one of the main instruments was the mini recorder. It's like, I think it was the drums. Remember that?
Oh, right. That's brilliant.
Man, it was like one of these things that was like, ironically, that is one of the things on that as rhythm. But I think that between those two songs, Edward, you orchestrated you orchestrated magic throughout this entire album. But I mean, they're going back to the beginning again, I think that Hyperform, the way that we laid it down was there was a substantial jam that would go on, and then Martine would come back and lay down the guitar on an overdub, which I always found to be like, he would just, if there was any doubt that there was something missing, it came with Martine's duality in that world. And then when I listened to it last night, I hadn't listened to it for a bit, and then the psychedelic ending was just so much more trippy than I remember it being.
Yeah, when it really goes out there, does it?
And so I do seemingly recall that Running Man and possibly other songs were jammed in the same sessions. I remember on Running Man, again, that was myself on drums, as it was on Hyperform, and Martine on bass, Dwayne on keys, and you guys would be at your rig too with samples as we were laying down the basis of these
Yeah, yeah.
so we'd lay
There's basically a chord structure that we worked around. I mean, Dwayne took it on, and he kind of like expanded upon it. It was wonderful what he did with that. And it's like, but we just jammed around that chord. I think it was actually quite for longer than how it exists on the record, probably.
Yeah, there was a lot of classic editing done.
Yeah, there's a lot of editing done of that with that. And that's one of my favorite tracks, actually.
Yeah, and you know, Foo was always, on it as far as the edits were concerned, as far as creativity was concerned. I remember that, we spent as much time, sitting with Foo doing the edits as we did the recordings. And big up Foo. This is him here. He's in. He's very rarely speaking or in any photographs that's captured along the way, but he worked on this album, and then he also worked on To Be an Angel Blind as well as our main engineer, him and Ken. But yeah, Foo. Running Man, I kind of find it hard to believe that we just sat down and improvised nearly half of this album after some fine Indian food.
I remember Rave always came up with some amazing, he always found that kind of like that little bit that joined everything together. He would often add a little bit later, like a little very subtle guitar line that he'd add into a piece. And I was astonished by that, I must say. Yeah, that was kind of genius, I thought.
As I listen to the album these days, I really have to be honest and say that Martine's solos are like, Martine, you may be listening right now. Were we witness to some some of the solos on, and what I witnessed with Martine and playing on Nine Lives to Wonder as well with you guys over there was some pretty genius playing. And his modesty and everything. I don't think he wasn't touting around that, he was a secret weapon, but by all means, Martine is just so on fire throughout this album with the solos.
Yeah, Running Man, it's just insane, that solo. It's like, wow.
At 5 minutes and 30 seconds, the windows just open right up to what could be seen as a Martine Gilmore, and then just the play between him and Dwayne's choral pieces, like those choral sounds, considering it was a jam and considering these are all called up, this wasn't like, okay, we constructed these songs over a week or a month. No, it's constructed like on the spot. And it just blows my mind. Edward, again, your lyrics, I'd love to think that there's an end just waiting right around the bend. Free falling. I mean, it's like I get these things that are like you'll never forget, like your lyrics. Like you and I've always said in my mind as a lyricist, and it's an honor for me to be able to say this to you, Edward, because I can just casually speak to you, but I think like I don't know a lyricist that I've ever known that has stuck with me in my mind more than the way you get in my head, how you do it, but. You've always had that ability before I knew you, and then meeting you, I told you that, and then continuing to work with you. I'm humbled by your greatness. I think.
Okay.
No, seriously, Edward, you really deserve to be hailed as, the true poet of our age, and I mean that genuinely. I'm not just saying that. Okay, let's move forward before Edward gets all teary-eyed. Song number 3, "Turn Me On, Dead Man," was great because this was a Silverman idea.
That was Phil. Phil idea.
talking about the EPS, it was a sequence that came strictly out of there, and I always like the magic of how like that particular sounds of it was so unique, and by the end, what I love about it is it starts off very pure to the form coming out of Phil's keyboard, and then by the end, the band 4 minutes in or so, the live band pretty much has integrated and beginning to take over. And
Yeah,
again, the ridiculous Martine solo.
yeah, yeah. It's a great song, actually. That one.
It was there something about there was some sort of Elvis inspiration that somebody said something about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what it was. It was about. It's actually about Elvis Presley, indeed. It's
What
I don't know where it came from, but it was Elvis Presley, indeed.
what about the Running Man? When you're thinking about writing a lyric like that or coming to your mind, what is it that
It's a little bit, I guess, like a personal thing in a way. The Running Man is just like sometimes how you feel, like you know, it's what's this? I never quite arrive, you know.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's my favorite line. I never quite arrive. It's like yeah, it's but very much that's a personal song, I'd say, like the lyrics of that, The Running Man.
Is there a lot of lyrics that like have a deep personal meaning that you would never let go of? It's sort of like, oh, I'll never tell you the story of that one.
Oh, there's tons. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, because obviously your own personal experience does does find its way into the lyrics. If ever I'd sing a song in sort of like I in the I, that means that's not me. If ever I do it in the third person, it quite possibly could be me. It's like the clues aren't very easy to follow, but that tends to be a truism.
Interesting. Hey, did you remember that each time we got together, I'd always grow one of these funny handlebar mustaches? The only time that I would ever have that.
I
There's
completely forgot about that handlebar moustache.
well, I
Wow,
thought it was true that we should try and get more,
that's like
more,
that's like
more
70s stuff, isn't it? Really?
70s-ish. And I see another rare picture of Fu there, and then Dwayne, Rave, and Joe again there. And here's the gold records that Martine was alluding to that were in the front of Mushroom Studios to intimidate you as you came into the studio. I believe that most of them were Heart albums.
Oh, right.
The band Heart recorded all their material there, and I believe that was most of them that were on there. But
Was that the album we were recording when we met the guy from Queensryche?
what was that about the guy from Queensryche?
Because I remember, I think it was at Mushroom Studios where we met the guy from Queensryche. We were recording, and he was recording in there as well.
Oh no, that was at Vancouver Studios. The next studio we went after, he was recording.
Oh, right. Really nice guy. Yeah, I remember.
Jeff from Queensryche absolutely is one of the biggest Pink Dots Tiergarten fans that I've ever met. He was absolutely like just wanted to talk about it the whole time.
Lovely guy, I remember.
He's
Yeah.
a huge, great guy, huge fan. I see this is in the control room looking back over the console, and I see this is the crew here. There's me with my silly mustache. I see Dwayne and crew, Ken, Ray, Rose. Yeah, the whole crew. This is really great is because, I only have one or two pictures of this console. So I'm really happy, Martine, that you sent another picture through of this classic console that we recorded here in this room. It's the classic. It's called a Richmond Sound Design custom board in this room. And what a great room this was. There's Ken at the console patching, Ken, the engineer. And then some rare shots here. Thank you very much, Martine, of Dwayne's setup, which again shows, I see ESQ, I see the Emax, I see, it looks to be possible that the K2000 has come into the scenario already.
I remember Dwayne doing a few solos, sort of like which were just astonishing.
Oh my God,
He
yeah.
just started playing these things, and sort of like all these wild chains of samples would sort of like start hitting you at every end. It was actually pretty insane what he was doing.
I'm going to say this is the Mirage for sure. And then this down here, I'm going to say is his SY-77 that we knew he had. But I'm really surprised to see what looks to be for sure S900 and two S1000s there. I also remember that we had a Roland S330, which is that down there, which is another sampler. So Dwayne had a plethora of samplers.
That's a hell of a rig, actually.
But to see the rig from Martine's perspective is very exciting. And then look at that, Edward. I didn't even have a picture of this. But this is a picture of the drum kit, Drumosaurus. And I want to call this version, it's the Too Dark Park version before we went on to the Last Rites version. And what was great about this is it had these barrels that was in the setup that were utilized in the recording as well. You can hear it throughout Running Man. Actually, there's a middle break where it's you know you can hear these prominently, and I'm situated right here by what were the reverb chambers. So thank you, Martine, for blessing me with a picture of that beast, and that is the sound of all the drums that you hear on the album. Here is the setup that Martine would have been utilizing. And then you guys were set up amongst this, Edward. I believe you guys were set up there right on those stands, if I'm not mistaken. You guys were set up here with your rigs, or possibly Phil or you guys were over here, but the classic old studio.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure I just had the W30. I don't think I had anything else with me. I might have done, but I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure on Last Post you play this grand piano as well.
Oh, I might have done. Yeah, I might have done.
A picture of the actual back of Mushroom Studios circa 1991 with the tape machines. Every other picture I have of this does not contain the tape machines or show the back wall with the original effects with the 2-track back there. This is the old school original. This would have been right before we made Last Rites. This studio would have stayed exactly the same. Oh my God. Can you believe that? Here's a picture of me in the Tear Garden hat with the silly mustache, as well as my shirt tucked in, and as well one of our exclusive members, the green guy.
Yeah, there was a lot of green guy. That's true.
Martine stayed at my house. He got to know my cats. This would have been the original Puppy and DOG. And then the restaurant. Do you remember how fabulous this restaurant was, Edward? The Raga?
It was the Sitar, wasn't it, I think?
No, this was the Raga. This was right up on
Raga. I forgot
the owner's name here was Raj, and he had a daughter named Basma. And basically, they used to just spoil us. We were up there almost every day.
No, I remember that. Yeah,
and I remember that there was a toss up between whether we liked the sitar or the raga better. And it's important to point out that the sitar is still there, and unfortunately, the raga's gone. So it's something that maybe one day, Edward, we can go to the sitar again. Let's talk about Romulus and Venus. This was one of where we actually said, okay, is there a couple of songs pre-written that we might want?
Yeah, that's right.
So I said,
you
yes,
actually
this one.
Recorded already, didn't you? You and Dwayne, I think, presented that almost finished.
Yeah, this would have been like coming from my apartment, and I had already worked on this song and found it that was had a vibe that seemed right. I played it for you, and you were like, insane.
No. I really like it.
We went with it. And I've had a lot of people ask me what the voices are from, and that is from I used to record Jamaican radio late at night because there was just some great spoken talk shows, basically late night chat sessions between people, and you'd get some real genuine commentary between people, and a lot of the stuff that I used to sample back then was from the studios in Jamaica. This guy named Gary G. I managed to get a photograph of him in the studio. Gary G in Jamaica, and that's his voice. If you're feeling a little down, sorry to undown your down.
Yeah.
But quite suitable. Edward, your lyrics again, just absolutely classic. There's no release until you untie me. I kind of get the picture that you're actually in a box the whole time.
It's yeah, I guess so. It's just like a picture of a relationship that sort of like where basically you're glued and you don't necessarily don't want to be glued.
She already got you tied up in a box though, and you're just kind of speaking past tense.
Oh, so I told you that. I mean, that sort of like what it is, that's an I song, so it's never about me.
Ah, perfect. That's a fictitious.
Yeah.
Ah, perfect. Well, I think that, a lot of people out of a lot of the songs on the album Romulus and Venus comes up a lot. I mean, we spoke about the improvisational factor. I think the great lie came again on the first night where we were setting up some sort of improvisational stuff, and it started saying, listen to this, Edward, these gated radios. And it was like all of a sudden, I thought like the whole essence of seeing David Allen, I think we had seen David Allen, and this live whole room, everybody was just sort of jiving on this. I think, again, a sequence that may have come from you or Phil, and we were just like jamming it all up. And then he said, what if we just made it all up? And just perfect scenario for that vibe. But like the gated radios on that and the way that it all came together and the harmonious aspect of it all, again, is the it's sort of like the environment of it.
That's what I love. I love it when anything goes and you just sort of, no idea is too wild, sort of like, every suggestion was sort of like, well, let's try it. It's like, that was the beauty of it. I mean, that's why it works so well. Everybody had that openness and sort of like was willing to just sort of like let it go out there.
Absolutely. And absolutely magical session. Empathy with the Devil. I mean, I'm struggling to try to remember where the impetus for that came up. I know that there's a great bass line and I know that I play the drums, but do you remember how the sequence came up?
And W30.
W30, there you go.
W30, yeah. Yeah, that's how it started. But the drums kind of like gave it this drive because it was like it was like that. It was really on its own. It's not much, sequence. But it's sort of like what happened around it is one of the most inspired jams I think.
I know.
Part of.
At this time, we hadn't met Ryan, but I do remember that Martine just was blowing my mind with, you're going past the Running Man, and now we're in Empathy with the Devil, and he's just killing it with this, really tight bass line. And I just felt like, when I look back on it, I think like between this and the Nine Lives to Wonder, why did this band ever stop not making more records? I think like for this lineup, maybe we're just blessed to do what we did. But when I listen back to some of the improvs from Nine Lives to Wonder and some of this era, I begin to wonder if there was this magical element that, I mean, for me, out of all the albums I ever worked on, the sessions for Last Man to Fly were the most magical.
Yeah, I did. I've always said it. It's the album probably I enjoyed recording the most. It was just magic. It was a little chunk of my life that was just unlike any other and just so special.
Well, you can't imagine for me too, because I'm coming from a place where you're like one of my favorite artists, and then now I'm in a situation making an album actually with the legendary Pink Dots in collaboration now. And I thought like, this is just tripping me out. So I couldn't think about that too much. It's a good thing we talked about other music and inspirations, because if I got thinking about that too much, I could have got really, whatever. But I always thought when we were making the albums that I thought like, between the inspirations of say Brain Ticket and all the things that you were bringing to the table that, we had never heard before, like the White Noise, and Faust and the more experimental sides of Can. I thought like, man, this is like, I wish that could continue to happen in your life where you get a door open to a world of music that is it's like a discovering diamonds or something like that to a young mind. And so exploring this improvisational sense with the sense of having all of you at your instruments and Dwayne and everybody and Martine on fire and everything. I thought like, I didn't think about it at the time, but now when I look back, it's just like, it's almost like, the perfect storm again. I just absolutely love My Flavor is a Rotting Man Ray or a wound reopening by surprise, a plunging elevator a millisecond before it hits the cellar. Just all these descriptive things that come in this song. So pungent it hums. Every time I smell something stinky, I'll always say that to this day. It's like, where did the idea of Empathy for the Devil come from? Is any particular?
Oh, it's just me having fun, when because I do get quite. Well, I was just amusing myself, sort of like, how irritating can I be? This sort of like was just enough to annoy you. It's just a state of mind that sort of like I just had to pin down, but sort of like I always crack myself up laughing as I actually write it. And if that happens, I know it works.
Has that ever happened to you where you're laying down a vocal and you actually?
Oh yeah, I start like, yeah. I love that. It normally takes a couple of takes. I have to psych myself into not laughing at the inappropriate moment.
The 6-minute chill out at the end. I remember that we're again graced
that was great
with how good Fu is at like making this edits just work so right. But just the space of it. But there's some particular sample in there. It sounds like a balloon with the air being let out of it. Do you remember?
Oh yeah, I know.
Who was that?
That was me. That was
that is so classic.
Okay, it's Pierre Henry.
A dedication to Pierre Henry.
Yeah.
Absolute classic. Yeah, you must go back and include Pierre Henry with that list of albums of inspiration for the album. Circles in the Sand was the next song that, again, was a pre-written song that I had written in the apartment and I thought would be very suitable. And indeed, I played it for you and you said, bring it to the table. And to me, it brought up the feeling again of the ooh song, kind of like a continuation of let's fill our jars and pour our jars in reservoirs, which between you and I'm kind of surprised that hasn't happened in the world yet. Inside thing there.
Might be better if it did.
We are making circles in the sand. There's just something about the way it came together. And once again, Martine, if you're listening, the sound of your guitar, your particular style, and the way you play the solo at the end is absolutely, to me, just absolutely on fire. Right. I thought there was a bit of John Fox inspiration in there. But what was really funny is, Edward, is that Circles in the Sand I was inspired by a band called Legendary Pink Dots. So it's like it's like a re-inspiration being brought forward to a band that features members of that. So imagine that. It's like Circles in the Sand was a big circle, and there it was. And I'm so delighted that ended up that way.
It's a lovely track. I totally agree.
There's some that bring more emotion to me than others. Like I'll get into that as we get maybe into within the next couple here. Love Notes and Carnations. I believe that song was started in the apartment, and it was Doors inspired. As I said, from sort of like watching that movie with you, the Hollywood Bowl 1969 performance. If you haven't seen it, people go check it out. Um, it was programmed beforehand, but then we brought it in, stripped it down. It was live played to, and it's like, kind of like the wonder of Mushroom to be able to like offer an idea in the sense of how you said the W30 was offered for Empathy with the Devil, and then we've just jammed right on top of that. Sort of like the greatest way to start
Yeah,
a song idea. It didn't have to be a finished idea. Could be an idea that gets fleshed out, and that was one of
that,
them.
that's you just have to toss the seed basically, and then you watch the tree grow. And some of the best pieces are like that. They're not actually they're not written. It's literally just a seed. But if the seed has sort of like potential, yeah, it'll go places.
Absolutely. I think the next song, "The Ship Named Despair," is like I can only say one word for that song, and that is Dwayne.
Right.
I mean, absolutely classic Dwayne recorded piano part. And I watched him do this, and this is the method of how the song was made. He recorded the piano part and he recorded it with MIDI so that what he could do is come back after and layer this exact same part being played by the piano with all sorts of other sounds. And that's how all the blends and changes happen between the layering. So he came back after and layered a string and layered this and layered that. And then Edward came and laid down absolutely classic vocal. And I couldn't listen to Ship Named Despair for years after
Okay, I
that.
can imagine. It's so Dwayne. It's
I had to pass it by because I knew if I listened to this, even when I listened to it last night, I was like, uh, I kind of talk to Dwayne when I hear it because it's just like he's in the room.
yeah, yeah.
What's your
That,
what's your memory of that when you heard that song?
oh, it's just blown away. Because you presented a few songs that were finished musically to me, and saying, well, can you get ideas for this? So I think I just basically I went off and just sort of like thought, right, 'cause I had them in my head, and then just wrote the lyrics for them. And yeah, and that was a ship named Despair. That's what that piano piece said to me. It's like a ship sort of tossed around and sort of like very romantic sort of song. Yeah, for me, it just spoke of this ship that was being tossed around on a lonely ocean.
Dwayne was the one that was so capable of like expressing the emotion like when I first heard that I thought like my God. And he did that to me a whole bunch of times where if I said something about the Doors, he'd start playing, Light My Fire or something like that. Do you remember? He would just like
Yeah.
launch into it. You'd be like, damn. And yeah, so witnessing Dwayne and seeing how he was at that time. He's such a sensitive guy. And you know, I just you got to say that nothing else needed to be added to that song except like what
No,
you and I believe. Did you add the bird sounds as well? I
I
don't know.
can't remember, to
I
be
added
honest.
birds or you added the birds. Maybe I think we added that from the possible.
Uh, I think that might be you or Dwayne as you added the birds. Yeah,
I
I don't
shoot
remember
flares in
myself.
the night. I love that. I love the lyrics and so special. And big up to Dwayne. There's one more picture here of Dwayne's setup circa last rites that we found recently from Scully. This doesn't look to be the complete setup he had in that studio there, though. But yeah, Dwayne and the magical setup. White Coats and Halos. I think we were talking about this. How we decided we're going to make a couple acoustic songs. No other ideas. Let's just Rave would bring out the acoustic and then just come together very quickly with the
Yeah,
MIDI.
I used to dive into the like there's like a little side room with Rave, and we'd sort of like just write it together. sort of like him on the acoustic, me on the voice. Then we just come out like 5 minutes later, and everybody joined. And then suddenly there was a song finished in 15 minutes or something like that. It was
Absolutely. So
inspired.
fun. It was so fun that I remember we said, let's do another. And I think I just said that earlier, but I'm tasting amber. I leave December. I just absolutely, there's something about the two songs as a pair, as sort of like a couple together, in the sense that if you think about, they were written back to back within, I'd say within an hour of each other, it seemed. But as you said, Isis Veiled, we had to switch instruments. And I thought,
but we managed, didn't we? We pulled it off.
Edward, you didn't have to switch instruments, though. You were still.
No, I was the lucky one. I got it easy.
I'll never forget, because like when I switched to the bass, I remembered that, oh, wait, watch me blow this on the very last note, because I wasn't too sure if on the very last note of the song, if I should go up or should go down, or which note I should hit. I was like, wait. So I just picked the note, and luckily it works. But I asked Martin after, and he was like, no, that was the right note. I was like, oh, phew. It's not.
Oh, it was good. If it passed with Martin, then, you know, so I actually had a long argument with Martin about one note in the Pink Dots song once, because I wanted it to finish on this particular note, I can't remember, and he wanted it to finish on this other note. He won, actually. He actually won that.
I mean, I can see how that, you know, how last notes, the way, you know, left it is incredibly important.
Oh no, it's the last note of the song. It's actually Prague Spring on Shadow Weaver. It's just like I really wanted to sort of like end on this kind of ominous note, like kind of discordant sort of. He wanted it to finish in a sort of like resolved kind of way, and in the end, it was resolved.
I think there's been a question about how did it feel coming in. Was it the Maria Dimension that you just made?
Yeah, that was Martin's first Pink Dots album was the Shadow Weaver. Maria was with Bob.
Okay, so the album previous to Last Man to Fly would be Shadow Weaver?
Shadow Weaver came after Last Man to Fly.
Hold on a second, I got it. Someone's asking here. There's been a question of as how did it feel coming from the previous Pink Dots album into the Tear Garden at this point? What was the differences?
Ooh.
Oh, here it is. Ooh. Secondly, Edward, what was it like to roll out of the Maria Dimension into this?
Well, the Maria Dimension, a lot happened in between the Maria Dimension and Last Man to Fly. You know, in that, you know, the dots on Maria Dimension were very, very tight. Again, it was an album that came with lots of sessions. There were great similarities to Last Man to Fly in many ways. But, you know, the sad thing was Bob becoming ill, and, you know, we lost him. And so like we went through that.
Yeah.
Incredible trauma. And, you know, we still, you know, as we toured in 1991, you know, we were touring without Bob. Bob was still alive at that time, but, you know, he was very, very ill. We had to, and Martin, you know, he encouraged Martin to join us, actually. It was a very emotional time, very, very emotional time. So it all does become a little bit of a blur, but if you to look at the Last Man to Fly it was like this beautiful island where you can't be touched by all the sadness that sort of like flows around you. And I think that's why for me it was so special. You know, I was in a different country, like Vancouver in the summer it was actually a beautiful place to be.
It was at that time. I mean, even that. Yeah. In the classic Tear Garden photo I showed a little while ago when we're in the park, that was indicative of how beautiful the weather was at that time, which is very typically unusual for Vancouver in a weird
Yeah.
way.
I mean, there was a kind of like a pattern to the day, we'd get up, we'd go down to the Robson Street Market to drink a latte, and sort of there was like a certain ritual to every day that was just so enjoyable. And it was magical. And of course, the sun was out all the time.
And then we're able to go to the studio and just express ourselves with that feeling, because it was also great for Dwayne and I being in this sort of magical space away from the tension of where Skinny Puppy was headed too.
Was it these last fights was sort of parallel, wasn't it? I think you'd recorded it.
No,
but
there was this question that we had, if we had recorded it or not. And then so the answer came when we realized that Martijn plays the last notes in a song called Download on last week. So
that's right, yeah. So it's something.
By the way,
it must have been kind of after it then. Maybe I remember hearing Last Rites with To Be an Angel Blind when we recorded that.
Yeah, it would have been after. So that's how we were able to utilize the Martijn part. Martijn made the comment, by the way, that he would like to dedicate that ending to Dwayne, which was very sweet. Thank you, Martijn.
Oh, it's lovely.
Edward, I got to say something about In Isis Veil, the lyrics. I'm getting low on beans and marmalade. You can't say marmalade. Got to say marmalade. I share my bed with Locust Girl. She flies. I'm sorry, man. These are no ordinary lyrics. I had to say that. As we roll into last post, I remember this because I remember that I'd been speaking to you guys about Ryan, and then Ryan rolled in the studio, and for the first time he picked up the bass, and I remember that somehow tape went rolling, and I didn't know if it was intended to be rolling or not, but somehow last post came up, and it's Martijn on guitar, Ryan on the first song he'll be playing with us, and as well with his future time that he would spend in Legendary Pink Dots. And it's just a classic moment. And Ryan chimed in today to say hello, as well as he wanted to say, I remember it all. Oh, this always puts this thing in front of it for a second. I remember it all as a kind of peak experience, all cylinders firing on full, where it seemed like ideas and good things happen in a magical, unbeatable flow. Also remember pickup truck loads of gals arriving during the jam later used for last post. I think this was Martijn's friend Joe brought over all her friends one night. You remember that?
Oh, I remember it well. It's something you don't forget.
And one girl started talking to me, unaware the red light was on, where I lost my bearings in the odd time signature, and started flailing around a bit. You can hear it in the moment in the track around. I think he put a time there, but I didn't get that copied. To the best of my recollection, I only played on 3 songs on Last Man to Fly. That would be Last Post, Circles in the Sand, Isis Veiled. Sounds like it might have. I don't think he played on Isis Veiled, but all the other tracks, definitely not me. Sounds like Marty or whoever else. The peak epic bass performance on Last Man to Fly is Marty on Empathy for the Devil, he thinks. Sheila Like the Rodeo, and Blobbo for sure he played on. Sybil, maybe.
Yeah.
I have no recollection at all ever playing that snappy bass line.
I think he did, actually. I'm not completely sure, but I think he did.
He says, what did he say? He could easily be Marty too. Most of the stuff on the rest of the jam stuff with E-bass sounds like Marty, but as far as you can tell, I can't remember who did that slappy bass. But thank you, Ryan, for chiming in. And, I sent a letter to Phil, didn't hear back from Phil today. But have you heard from Phil lately?
A bit around his birthday, we were sort of like toing and throwing a little bit. Yeah, he seems fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shame he probably just didn't see your mail, I guess.
Yeah, I sent a birthday greeting to Phil. Didn't, hey, man, he's taking it easy. Let the guy take it easy. But, Phil, always fun to have on the album, the way, There's more Phil about the album time, I think. Phil's Phil getting into it face. And big up to Phil. What else I got here written down? We discussed a happy end, a place with lemon slices on a shore with violins. Did you know that lemon? I have a thing about lemons, and when you say that, it's almost like, ooh, that's like the thing. I don't know if you knew. I don't know if you knew that. If I have a thing about lemons, I
I
bet
like
you're
them.
missing shoe and my Geiger counter too. Again, Edward, I just have to point out some of these things that stick with me. Uh, the what was this say? Oh yeah. At the end, believe it or not, we have a video, the only video recording of the entire album.
Oh,
Some,
really?
somehow, I don't know. Hold on a sec here. I don't think that's working. I think it's this one. Can you see that?
I see a blackness.
Yeah, blackness. Somehow, this is the only. Come on, QuickTime play. Oh, it's taking. Here we go.
Oh,
This is the only video from the sessions that when I found this, I was like, oh my God, I thought this VHS tape is gonna have gold on it. And the only thing it has is this segment where it's the end of last post.
oh, right.
We've got the toys here.
This is when we're making up. Who was it we were making laugh? Somebody had this wild laugh.
I believe it was Dave Jackson's girlfriend.
Yeah, because we were jumping around making a laugh, like pulling faces and like swinging around and yeah, there we go.
Like this.
Oh my God.
Yeah, actual recording. This, I mean, I kind of wish that this, because it has everybody. There's Dwayne. I mean, there she is laughing. I kind of, this is something where when you discover a tape like this, you're hoping that it's going to have like us jamming one of the songs or, playing, but actually, it actually, I think it has more footage of us eating at the Indian food restaurant. It says Panacoke up there. Can you see that?
Panacoke.
Wow. Big up Dwayne. Wow. Yeah, actual footage, Pete.
That's a very hard thing to do to make somebody laugh, actually.
God, and I actually have a mullet. I have a mullet and I have a mullet and I have a handlebar mustache. Hey, look at this as we're eating some food. There is Phil.
Yeah. Pretty good, I think.
Do you remember these recordings benchmarked with food? Pizza and Indian food. I guess we did eat something other than Indian food. Rave always hated being filmed. Let's talk about the last song.
Later.
A word from every single sentence. Isn't that right, Dwayne? Dwayne was there. Dwayne was part of it.
Yes, actual footage from the album. 3D Technicolor scrambled egg trip down the hellhole. Edward, that was where you were. There's Dave Jackson. Edward, you were on the grand piano, and I think that was where people were encouraged to set up alternative setups once again. And I believe I set up dirt, rock, sand, and sticks, and Dwayne played some of the small boxes and stuff like that, and was I think probably the last inspiration of the album. Edward, did we did the Sheila Like the Rodeo EP at the same time, obviously, right?
It was the same time, yeah. Yeah.
So did we, I mean, it kind of seems like, how did we know when there would be, there's Martine in his young, youthful era. How did we know, like, it kind of seems like Sheila Like the Rodeo is kind of like, I know it came from Dwayne, and I know it was another Duck song that came. It was like the early FM program stuff, and it kind of had a different vibe altogether. It kind of seemed like, was it intended that Sheila Like the Rodeo wouldn't be on the album?
I think that I'm not actually I'm not sure. Seems odd because it's actually wasn't it released even at the same time as Last Man to Fly, as like the single or something like that, or did it come a little bit after?
It came later. It came in 93.
Oh,
So
did it came that much later?
yeah, it was a bit later. So I'm trying to remember if you guys came back, or I mean,
No. So it was all recorded then. Everything was recorded then. That's for sure. Yeah, because you had a whole lot of things that you sort of presented to me that you wanted me to like put vocals on.
yeah.
That's where Blobbo came from. I remember. I think Blobbo was actually played, but Sheila Like the Rodeo, yeah. Ship Named Despair, Romulus and Venus. We did them all very quickly.
So the Strong and Winding Toad, Do It Yourself from A to Z, Part 1, Part 2, sounds to me like you were saying, I think we did most of that.
It's almost in one night. A lot
I
of
think it
that.
was one night. And
Yeah.
by this time, I believe, yeah, Ryan had joined us, and we had come into some of the jamming elements. But I want to ask, who played the theremin in Strong and Winding Toad?
Ooh, wouldn't it be Dwayne?
I don't think so. I think it was either you or Phil, but I don't know who did it.
Could he? I mean, I'm not sure if he had it then. I mean, Ryan had a theremin. It certainly wasn't me. I didn't have a theremin.
It was
I was given a theremin once on a tour.
but
not that early, I don't think.
when I listen to it now, I actually I like the fact that I can't remember, a lot of the details about that. But man, that theremin performance is seriously nice on Strong and Winding Toad.
Yeah, I really don't remember who did that. Pretty certain it's not me because yeah, I've never really mastered the theremin, so it couldn't have been me.
You know what's awesome is that this mini recorder that we used on the album, I actually found it. I said, hey, where is that thing? And I went downstairs and found it and realized that it didn't have batteries. I put batteries in it. So this tape, I think it might be from that era. I haven't actually listened to it, but after our chat today, I'm going to listen through to see what's all on said tape. That's the beauty of not listening to a tape for a long while.
That's great.
There's more of the sessions here than I thought. Some home recordings and stuff, but unfortunately, no other jamming. Oh, I wish we had captured jamming. Actually, yeah, walking up and back to the restaurant is featured in here, which is, you can see Vancouver in the distance.
Oh, wow.
Let's say, Keep the Bomb Under Your Coat. Really nice ambient track. Edward, I want to say in Sunev Dana Silamur, which is Romulus and Venus backwards. I've always said that I think that you have the best sounding backwards voice on record. Take any Pink Dots, anything you ever hear, the backwards stuff you do, it always sounds right. Do you remember how steep that hill was to walk up and down to the restaurant?
I do remember this. Yeah, that brings back such memories. Actually, seeing that.
What's your takeaway of the memories on the album, Edward? What do you think about?
Ooh, as I say, it was like this magical sort of like island in a troublesome sea, because sort of like these were not easy times. The early 90s, we really struggled to sort of like keep body and soul together. They were like you know, it was difficult. You know, we had to tour to survive. We all at one point there were 4 of us living in this tiny little flat. Yeah, it was very hard times, but that
I remember that flat.
Yeah, of course, yeah, my horse, yeah.
I mean,
But this was like this amazing oasis, and it was just just the fact that the recording was done. You know, we had an engineer. We had a producer. You know, it was actually really very special for that too. You know, like really very much part of these albums. You know, the technical team was superb.
For sure. And then we must mention, of course, the wonderful work on the art that Christoph Hiemann did.
Christoph did. Yeah, it fits, doesn't it? It's
Christoph
so
Hirsch nicht auf Sofa. HNAS.
Yeah.
And Edward, you brought in interesting people to do artwork, from Christoph to Stephen Stapleton for the next album.
Yeah.
Incredible. I mean, Teresa Lombardi did the angel on the graphics here. Big up, Teresa.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
great.
features all the wonderful lyrics, and then the classic shot.
Oh yeah. I remember this in the park.
From the
Stanley
park.
Yeah.
With the most greatest weather I ever remember in Vancouver. And
It was like this incredible idyllic summer. It was almost like something from a dream.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And Christoph did this cover too, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, oh, it's a great cover actually.
Christoph, he kind of like did like cut-ups, like cut up artwork. Yeah, this is like before the time of computers, folks. I'm gonna say.
It's true.
You ever hear from Christoph much anymore? I haven't heard.
Not for a long time. But yeah, it's just basically he's following his own path. I mean, he has a few years actually now. I think he's doing really well. He's still making really good music, and you know, it's just paths kind of like go different ways a bit at certain points.
Yeah, it's incredible, man. I've like since these days, Edward, of being here at Channel One with your first performance, and you asking me to work with you, and get to know you over the time and learn about all the classic experiences we've had. I think, like, for me, the takeaway from Last Man to Fly, as well as the 9 Lives to Wonder, is just like, it's some of my favorite memories of my life.
It was a very special period, I must say. I really wish Last Man to Fly did come on Vital, I must admit. Looking at that cover and sort of like just imagining it, you know, holding this thing in my hands, you know, it's such a shame. It was close a couple of years ago, I had the feeling, but then they just didn't follow.
I was just speaking to Artifact about this, and they said that they have a very positive feeling about going to network and getting a deal spoken about releasing these on vinyl, proper release.
Please, so, just hold the album. I don't care about what the deal is. I just want to hold the album.
Yeah. I think we're both on that. But I think Artifact does an amazing job when they do the re-releases, and I will keep you guys afloat of this. We did speak about this yesterday, but we are going to keep you guys afloat of all this, as well as like any new plans we have. I last saw you guys when we did the party here for the Brown Acid Caveat, and so it's like, no, actually I saw you when you did your gig here, of course, with Randall, but it's just like too few and far between when we're able to see each other. So I propose that we should consider doing in 2024 a new Tear Garden.
Yes, Consider it done.
Consider it. I think we've got a great lineup, and I think that from considering everything that's possible, it's certainly always a healing experience.
Totally, and we should get some of the other guys in to sort of like do parts as well, because that was a great thing. Brown Acid Caveat, I thought.
Absolutely agree, and I'd like to thank you, Edward, for joining me here today for this chat, and for everybody for chiming in with some. Do you want to take a couple quick questions, Edward?
Well, sure.
Let's take some quick questions here from you guys. Let's see. What does it feel like to know you had part in recording the best album of all time?
Well, I can't answer that one.
How about
we already answered that one.
Can you both share what you were listening to at the time?
Oh, 1991, 92.
You remember what it is you were searching for? Because I remember you still hit record stores.
Yeah. That was a big thing for me at that time. But what was I particularly into in 1991? I can't really. That's gone for me. I can't remember that. I must admit. It might have been right at the moment when I discovered jazz, because I actually got into jazz a bit late.
Same.
And when it hit me, by God, it hit me. I remember it was like a magic moment. We played in Kansas City. I was in a record store and they were playing Big Fun by Miles Davis. It's like one of those runs to the desk. It's like, what is this? It's like, oh, Big Fun, Miles Davis. I want it now. And then sort of like I just basically devoured everything I could get by Miles. Like, it's like it's a complete epiphany. That was my gateway into jazz. And I just thought, why did this take so long? It's like, and from then on, I really loved, great jazz.
Yeah, I think it was you guys again that got me into great albums. If I wouldn't have, I don't think I would have got into Sun Ra or the Miles stuff without Ryan sending it to me. But that was the thing. Right after that, Ryan would be like, "Oh, you haven't heard this?" And
oh yeah. We used to really be into jazz together. I mean, Ryan was deeply into it.
Yeah, he was into it, and then he got me into dub too, which I will thank.
Oh, great stuff.
Ryan for that. Penelope asks, is it true that the drums of Romulus and Venus were done in tribute to New Order's Bizarre Love Triangle? Hey,
only you could answer that, Kevin.
I was inspired by New Order at that time in life, I will say. I don't think it was done in tribute though. But I did like New Order.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah. Stephen Clifton, one of my all-time favorites of yours and everyone's output. I love the dragging bass and bubbly water sounds of Running Man, the crazy story in Isis Veiled, no idea what the title means. Question, is there any rhyme or reason to the snare fills on Romulus? I think somebody just asked that. It's not in tribute, it's just my goofy way of programming. Please elucidate us on Isis Veiled. Is that blue part of the cover denim fringe? I don't know. Yes, we will try to get vinyl for you guys.
Oh my God! Saw LPD play in Myrtle Beach
in '99.
There were 21 people there. It was in the House of Blues. This is one of the 21 people who showed up in Myrtle Beach.
That's awesome. Exit, thank you for your comment there. Definitely makes Edward's day to remember. Edward, you have a fantastic memory. It's like if someone said, where did you play in Myrtle Beach in 1991? You know the name of the venue.
Well, it's the House of Blues. It's hard to forget.
That's amazing.
Especially when it was empty.
Adam, how could anyone not instantly fall in love with Romulus and Venus? I'm curious about the samples. Yeah, I think we said that is from the Jamaican radio. Mineral Riffage, the second greatest Album comment from Stubborn Puppet. This is a legendary album. I didn't hear it till much later when I was driving into my side projects and blah blah. The question is, which may cover in the chat. What events led up to the other LPDs joining you, Edward, and Dwayne and Mushroom for this album?
Oh, we were there, weren't we? We were all there.
We were there.
Vancouver, yeah, we were there. So it's like, why not?
I think you maybe formally said to those guys, "Hey, would you like to partake?" Didn't you?
I probably did. Yeah, probably did. Because so we must have discussed it between us, I'm sure. You know,
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So,
hey, can we have Phil? Oh, absolutely. Can we have Martin? I don't know about that guy. No, actually, I think there was nothing I looked forward to more than when I actually got to go over to your world and see how you guys make albums when we did 9 Lives to Wonder. And we pretty much the same crew. You know, that for myself, I'm glad that exists on video.
That's a nice, that's a trippy video.
Trippy. When I watched it back, the first time, it had been years later, I watched that video back and I thought like, wow, not only does it sound good, the recordings of everything are really good on it. And then I thought like, the visuals are trippy as hell. So yeah, go and check that out if you haven't seen it. Edward, thank you so much for the time today and going back in time with us on this. I know that everybody appreciates these look backs, and I'd like to thank all you Patreon supporters. Edward, I think this is about the 5th time you've joined me on here. By the way, Edward, Scully says hello, love and respect from Scully.
Oh, love to Scully, absolutely.
We've got Dre on the side here.
And Dre, I love to Dre as well.
Everybody here on the side, Eric, Greg Nelson, Penelope, Tony Lippert, thank you very much for your support. Hello from Rihanna. Rihanna, you want to stick your head in here?
Rihanna.
She says she doesn't have her hair done.
No worries.
But Edward, what are you going to do today? Oh, it's nighttime there.
It's nighttime. Probably. I'm watching Breaking Bad for about the 6th time with Alona.
Oh, wow. So, like, should I watch that?
I love Breaking Bad. It's really good.
What's
so like? Yeah, it's just a sort of like we don't watch that much TV, but sort of like sometimes we return to something like that if it really, because you always see something new in it.
Arya's favorite show.
What, you like it?
I haven't watched it. Arya is obsessed with
it. Yeah, maybe we should watch it. Edward, what's just a quick what's coming up? Anything coming up? Dates, albums?
Well, at the moment, tentatively writing little bits for the Next Dots album. I've got a few ideas, but I haven't put them forward yet because I always like to chew on them. But Randall's got a few ideas, sort of like been sending me. So it's bubbling a little bit. I got a new solo album that is sort of like under wraps at the moment. You know, sort of. I'm getting like Ray and Peter are mastering it right now.
Nice.
So that's called T's, C's, Apply.
When will that be out?
I don't know yet.
Secret.
Maybe next month, maybe a couple of months. Not completely sure yet. But when it feels like it's absolutely there, then it will be out there.
Excellent. I look forward to that. Keep us posted. And I've got this tour to do, and then when the tour is finished, apparently I'm, it's like I'm.
Oh, you got a few more puppy dates, haven't you?
Yeah, we got a whole nother leg, and then after that, apparently, okay, that's it. We're retired. So
no Europe, no Europe.
Apparently not. Apparently not. I have not heard any word about that, so I can't say anything.
Lots of people asking over here. I tell you, it'll go well.
Now, my thought is that because there's been no talk of it whatsoever, that they're just, they'll probably wait until we get this all out of the way, and then they'll start talking about it. But as of right now, there hasn't been any discussion of it whatsoever. How is things in Europe? I heard that things aren't as lucrative now as they once were for a lot of bands.
It's never been lucrative. It's always a bit tough in terms of like how it pays. But the tour we did earlier this year was actually pretty good. I must say, people turned up in numbers. It was decent, better than the time before when we toured Europe. But yeah, it's never easy, Europe. It's like yeah, actually America is easier. I don't know why. It just you get more shows, and basically it's easy to get by.
Yeah.
Yeah, Europe is a little bit of juggling going on.
By it all. Edward, this is the only chat I've ever done where it's like Kilroy.
Kilroy?
Look at how your face is going up at the nose.
I thought Kilroy was here. Yeah.
Kilroy was here. This whole chat. I think it's classic. You own it. You're owning it, and I think that's the way to be. Once again, I'm not going to go on and say thank you about 46,000 times. I love you, my brother. Thank you for joining me on the chat.
I'm here.
Have a wonderful eve, and best to you and family.
Oh, thanks, Kevin.
Night, Edward.